after. Does anybody have any, we're gonna try to get done by 11, Bill, so that we can go out to Paul's place.
Okay. I'll keep my mouth shut.
Well, I don't think we have any problem. We got
Paul
a
Gundy,
few things to discuss,
outstanding
but
conservationist.
nothing too major. Does anybody have any public comments to bring to the meeting today? Does anybody have any public comments for today? Does anybody have any public comments they'd like to bring up today? If not, we'll move on to the agenda.
I'll move approval of the agenda.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries on the agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have to discuss the River Watershed One plan, the
Yep.
JPA fiscal agent.
So that's got that separate agenda that's in the darker paper, gray paper. So treasurer's report, there's really nothing different from last month other than the interest earned, right?
Yeah, we're just waiting for everybody to cash their checks.
We had payments were approved by policy committee about 3-4 weeks ago, and so checks were sent out after that, and not all of them have cashed their checks yet.
So that interest accumulate, that's so far this year? Yep.
846 is this year, the total for the whole.
Oh, that's right, 19,900. So the interest rate must be better?
No, it's actually gone down.
Okay, last year that wasn't a full year, it was only 900. Okay. And then we have the,
About the interest rate, though, we also have that new grant, so we have more money in there this year. That's why we're ahead of last year already, or almost caught up to last year.
so there isn't much activity of things happening with the river projects or anything, or?
There is, but we do the billing quarterly. And so we approved the
Okay,
payments, was that last month? We approved it, and that was actually for the first quarter. We just did it in June because the policy committee didn't meet till June. We'll bring stuff to you in August because the policy committee also meets in August. That way, everybody's approvals are close together instead of sitting on it.
okay. Is there anything more to discuss on the river?
Well, we need approval of the treasurer's report.
Okay,
I'll move approval of the treasurer's report.
second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Has all the money been allocated on both years?
Well, yes and no. On the first grant, there's a few things that haven't been allocated yet, but they're working on them. The main one that's hasn't been allocated is the drinking water supply management area funds. And Olmsted County is working with the city of Chatfield and probably have that real soon. I think they're supposed to be meeting with them, I think this week, to present their proposed projects. And I'll have a little bit more to discuss it. Oh, actually, are you ready for number 2 on there?
Okay, that, any more update on the river project?
Well, the 2A is the exhibit A in sub-agreements.
Yeah,
So we need approval of an amendment to the sub-agreement, Exhibit A, and basically what we were just talking about, Red River and Fillmore SWCD are transferring their drinking water supply management area technical assistance dollars to Olmsted SWCD. Red River isn't gonna need it for Spring Grove because they got a cover crop grant that's covering all their cover crops within the county. So they didn't need it. And Fillmore SWCD is just letting Olmsted SWCD take the lead on working with the city of Chatfield. City of Chatfield's, part of it's in Olmsted, part of it's in Fillmore County. So they're transferring those funds. Fillmore SWCD is receiving the last of the unencumbered technical assistance dollars. That'd be $12,519. And then what we were looking at for Winona SWCD is transferring some of our technical assistance dollars to cover some grant administration that we had left yet. It'd be $2,300, $2,310.
I'll move approval of the amendment.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to approve the amendment.
And that was already approved by the policy committee in June. And Olmsted approved it in their June meeting, and Red River is taking it to their board as we speak. So the last one would be Fillmore SWCD will be meeting next week to approve it. So that's all I have on that grant. The only other update we have is the policy committee, I guess I already mentioned that, is meeting August 24th. And the main thing would be to pay bills, but there'll also be some presentations, other discussions too.
Okay. Next is the cost share contracts.
You got your long sheet. If you look at the 2019 side, it says up above, at the top, it says cost share contracts 2019. There, we have to make an adjustment to something that was approved last month, just a technicality. We had approved pensions to all come out of local capacity funds, but that exceeded our 7,500 maximum. So we have to shift $333.63 to come out of the county instead of the local capacity funds. And then on the 2020 side, we have a new contract for Mike Chickanowski for Oriental Bittersweet, the cooperative weed management cost share. This will be, we'll have, was it 3 active contracts now? And then with this contract, we'll have room for 1 more. I think that's all we need for approval. I do have some updates too.
For approving the Mike Chickanowski one.
And the fund adjustment for the Peshan cost share. It's just adjusting where it's coming out of.
There was 2 ponds built at Pashon, wasn't there, or just 1?
2.
2 of them, yep,
Two. And they're both done, completed.
yep.
Did we have a motion then to approve the contracts? We have to,
Well, Josh,
Do we need separate motions on those?
No,
oh, you gonna combine the 2?
Yeah, somebody can make it, that's fine.
I'll second it then.
okay then, all in favor of the motion to approve the cost share contracts,
Aye.
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries on that.
I just wanted to give you a couple more updates on construction. The Kreidemacher manure pits, the large first stage is complete, and I believe they might be using it now. The second pit is, they're waiting for the contractor to come and put in the liner. And they were supposed to start on Monday, and I'm not sure what happened, but they weren't able to start. The contractor wasn't there yet. So hopefully, maybe next week, I don't know if maybe, they did talk about tomorrow, didn't they?
Yeah, they're supposed to be showing up tomorrow.
Yeah, they missed all this dry weather.
Yeah, it's supposed to start raining next week, so.
I
couple
would
days
propose
anyway.
that you don't use that contractor anymore.
They don't have a lot of choices. The installation is done by a contractor out of Washington State.
Really?
There's not a lot of them that do it.
To me, that should have been done a long time ago, that project, but it,
The liner company signs off on the certification of the pit and they stand behind it for 10 years.
okay.
So the company has to put it in.
Um,
Purchase it.
What is the second pit for?
It's the water,
Yeah, it's more liquid.
yeah.
So
It's just, I'm not sure the
It's the same
specifics,
as
but
Paul
that's the way
Lenny's.
the
If you-
engineer designed it.
If you wanna look at the same replica as Paul has one, if you look at his today or whatever, they're putting, Kreidemachers will be that same thing.
So the main pit, the water will flow over into the
Yeah.
second pit?
Yeah,
It'd be a lot cleaner water going into the second. It'd be similar to your sewer ponds where you have 2 or 3 stages.
Evaporate, or what happens there?
We aren't doing that.
you can irrigate it through a, like, McNallen's up there, they used to do that.
It's they use one as a sediment pond and one as a pump pond, so a lot of times they'll agitate one, but don't have to agitate the other, so depending on the outstream or whatever they do with it, it's, especially if you have flush lanes and things like that, a lot of times they use one that way, and then they use the other one as more of a solid, so they might even put a solid separator on one and not on the other one, just depends. So, I don't know what system they put in, but.
Sometimes when they have those two, when they're agitating the main, they might pump water over
Yep.
into the main to.
Yeah,
Because they don't wanna haul waterway up and down the road, so a lot of times that's what they'll pump through the tubes, and then they'll
Yeah.
dry haul out the others.
Couple other things, just to let you know, we do have a lot of money sitting there not encumbered yet for cost share. We're working with the NRCS, they got pre-approval on a number of projects, and so we're working with them to figure out which projects need more money, and we'll piggyback on them. We're looking at probably around 10 to 12 contracts, 13 grade staves, 10 or more grass waterways. And the original estimates were $277,000 worth of projects, with about 100 coming from us for cost share. Those are original ones. We're, like we said, they're talking with the landowners, determining who's gonna go ahead with their projects. We already have one that has backed out, and probably a second one too, the way it sounds. Hopefully we'll have a bunch of this to bring to you guys.
but now is not a very good time, I mean, usually put waterways in the spring or in the fall.
This is just getting the contract.
Oh, okay,
Most likely, none of these will happen this year. Maybe a couple things this fall, but,
okay,
so in August and September, we'll probably be bringing contracts to you. August, we'll probably be bringing an updated non-structural land management practice plan. That's something we have to pass every year for our cover crop cost share. So we'll probably be bringing that to you in August. And we're still waiting for the state funds to be dispersed. The state year starts July 1st, and we usually don't get our funds until August, sometimes September or October. Who knows when it's gonna come this year. So, that's all I have for updates on that.
okay. For new business, we have the Minnesota Public Employees Insurance Program. bring up the premium cost of $3,684.
What we were looking at is just asking if we can switch it from checking to online payment. I think that's the only change, right?
Any cost to it? Usually there's not a cost.
No, there's not.
Most of the time it's, yeah, they want you to do it.
Yep.
So moved.
Yeah, that, okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to switch from check to online. Data practice policies.
Okay, we have to review and approve our policies every year. And we sent them out to Karen to have her review and see if there were any updates with legislative actions and things that we needed to make. And there wasn't any changes needed because of that. If you look at, you got your green sheet. There were just a few odds and ends that we just needed to correct in. We had a blank where we were supposed to put a page number, we didn't, so we added that. Corrected a sentence that said Winona County rather than Winona County SWCD. In the fee schedule, we have to update every year what our hourly billing rate is, and that we have to use the lowest one on staff. So we updated that. The policy for the public, we corrected a couple places to reference page 6 rather than page 8, the typo in there, and then removed a duplicate sentence. These are all number of pages long, so we didn't print them all out for you. And looking at, there was just some corrective actions. I didn't think it was that important to, but if you want to look at them, they're all online too. So we just need approval or if you have any questions.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to approve that. And then the Minnesota DNR groundwater leveling monitoring agreement for next year. We have to approve that, so,
That's a contract that we do every year,
Yeah.
just to help DNR doing our monitoring. They have a couple wells over, over by Heinz, by where Utica dump area, be just north of there, about half mile, if you guys know where that's at. And we check it 4 times a year. We get paid $30 for each visit. They just send a thing down into the well to measure it. There's also an automated one, and they download the data from that and then come back to the office and send it all up to the DNR state office. And the manual one is to make sure that everything's still working on the electronic stuff. And that actually, it's a 2021, but like I said, their fiscal year started July 1st, so that actually starts right now.
They share that data back with us.
I don't remember what all they, should ask Amanda when she's here. They do share some of the stuff. I don't know if she keeps it or not. But it's really to keep an eye on if our groundwater level is making big
Well,
changes
that's
or not.
what it's mostly for.
Yeah, nothing to do with water quality or anything.
Okay.
does Amanda do this?
Yep.
Great.
What's happening with the groundwater, the level? I mean, that's something I hardly ever hear anything about.
There hasn't been a lot of change. I know last year there was one time she did check it that it had gone down. I don't remember if they said it was significant, but it was measurable difference, but I think it was like 6 inches. For us, I don't think it means a whole lot, but I don't know what it means to DNR. So generally in this area, it sounds like it's been maintaining pretty good.
Stable? Some areas of the Midwest, or I guess Kansas, Nebraska, it's critically low and continues to get lower, right?
Oh, even other parts of Minnesota too, up north of the cities, they've had a lot of problems up there.
Places where they irrigate.
Northern Minnesota, the Duluth area has a lot of some drought concerns right now.
They're getting rain, maybe that'll help a little bit.
Yeah. Statewide though, we've had quite a bit of rain early. I mean, you'd think that the water level would be either the same or up a little bit in them areas where we've had a lot of rain, but.
Yeah, it's hard to tell how much that rain actually gets to the aquifer.
Usually, I can't remember exact numbers, but it seems like it's around 10% that actually gets down to the aquifers. Is a general rule. I can't remember exact, but I think it was around there. You know, definitely changes depending on your location and soils and bedrock and everything else.
I don't know, by, our dairy farm, you know, we have a fairly shallow well there. And it is contaminated. But, you know, it's 180 feet deep approximately. And whenever I've had to pull the pump, we've got 80 feet of water in that well.
Yep.
So, but I think that's, you know, something that has something to do with the soil types over there. I mean, it's pretty sandy over there, and I know what
Funny,
is.
you get by with, because over, like, on the ridge, all the wells are over around 400.
Yeah. Yeah, he's watering over
Yeah.
550 cows now. I just talked to Parker the other day and he says the well's doing just fine. So, you know, it was years ago I was thinking about maybe putting up a larger dairy just west of the house, and I had a DNR guy telling me, I was asking him about water supply, and he says, your dairy is, will take, he said the equivalent is like maybe a drop in the ocean. There's so much water in that area. So,
Okay.
So we need approval on that grant, on that agreement.
Oh, that's right.
so moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the groundwater monitoring?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yeah. I know that this is, but, on the monitoring, you mentioned that it was $30. I think in the future, we could maybe raise that. I think that's on the low end of the scale. I don't know if that's on the DNR or who,
They said it, but we can
yeah.
mention to them too. I was thinking that same thing. It takes, I don't think it takes an hour for her to do it, but
But you're gonna run a vehicle, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, and Nunny is not, but I mean, it's just a service.
yep. And we try and do it when we're in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Discuss the vehicle rotation plan.
So last month you guys approved to lease that Blazer, and Lewis and Auto sent everything in, and GM Financial came back and said we don't lease to government agencies. And we went between Lewis and Auto, I talked with them quite a bit, and they've talked with GM quite a bit, and they wouldn't budge on it. So we need to reconsider what we want to do. This is the best options right there. We could purchase that Blazer for $34,863, which is actually about $1,500 less than they had last month. Every month new incentives come out, so apparently July has better incentives. Both the Blazer is a better deal for purchase, and the Jeep Grand Cherokee is a better deal this month for purchase or for leasing. So And again, I kept the pickup option on there if we continue not having all these, events and presentations and, fair and meetings. If that goes on for 2 or 3 years, we probably don't need that type of vehicle, but I assume that's not gonna happen.
I got one question. I don't know the answer to this, and that maybe sounds like a stupid question, but why does the SWCD own all these vehicles and not pay the employees to use theirs?
I don't know. That is an option. I personally don't wanna be using my vehicle for all this running around. It's a lot of wear and tear, not just the gas, but it's a lot of wear and tear on their vehicles. But it is an option, and we do that occasionally. If vehicles aren't available, we'll use our own and get reimbursed.
For transportation, that's fine, but for a lot of the occasions like the fair and where Amanda goes down to La Crosse and has to haul all that stuff, a personal vehicle maybe isn't gonna work.
Yeah, she doesn't have a vehicle to haul that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
I think that, we're better off, like the plan we've been on, to lease rather than to buy. I don't know if anybody other feel on that, but.
There's 2 ways to really waste, I'm gonna use the term waste. That's new vehicles and farm machinery. A lot of people go broke buying both. It seems like our leases are too short. Any of these vehicles that we deal with, I would think would last 10 years with no problem at all if we can get the right vehicle, which a Jeep Grand Cherokee probably is. Rather than, what, we have 3-year leases or 4?
The most I've been able to find is a 42-month. What we had
3.5 years.
the last
They
2
don't
were
run leases that
36
long
months.
on
No,
cars.
they wanna maintain a value for resale.
Uh-huh.
You know, if you're gonna keep a car 10 years, then you almost have to buy it.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that if we could make, I don't know if dealerships or car companies that do this or not, but lease it for the 3.5 years, and before we do that, have some sort of an agreement where we can lease it again with to pay it off with that lease.
They don't, the only option is to either turn it back in or purchase it outright at the end of the lease.
Mhm.
Or actually, I believe you can purchase it outright anytime during the lease. I could be wrong on that, but you
We're
definitely
always
could
struggling
purchase it
with
out.
financials and with buying new vehicles or leasing new vehicles all the time. That's a tremendous amount of money.
Daryl, fill us in again about what's advantageous about leasing versus owning. I know there's some billing things, but we like to lump sum that in, but I mean, what's the true, is there?
Basically, a lease we can add into our billing rate, so it is billed against
Yeah.
every grant we have, which is 3/4 of our budget. If
What
we
does that
purchase, we can't
But what
do
does that equate to? That's what we're always missing. Is it 10 cents or $10,000? You know, what are we losing by not doing that?
Well, what we're losing, if we purchase, we have to take it out of either a county allocation or operating reserves,
Right,
one of
yeah.
those two. The county allocation is all spent.
So
It-
what
it's
you're
all
saying is
accounted for.
the entire thing could be billed to the grant side, leaving us more free capital on
Yep.
the allocated side.
Yep.
So there is what percentage, I mean, is it 100% of the cost would be over there? You know, do you see what I'm saying? On the
It'd be
billable side?
100% would come through everything, not just the grants, but it would also come out of our county allocation, because everything we
But
do.
that's the ratio I'm looking for. How
Yeah.
much to this side, to that side?
It'd be through the whole budget, our whole, income, other than our tree sales and, you know, and things like that.
What I'm saying is that we have $10,000, just say it costs us $10,000 a year, $5,000 a year. How much is it gonna be the billable side? How much is it gonna come out of the county allocation side?
It would all be out of the billable.
All out of the bill.
Yep.
So we would have that $5,000 that we could go do whatever else we wanted, because that's, I understand this being a mayor, misappropriation of funds, and I get all
Yep.
that stuff. So that's what I always looked at and said, okay, how does that swing one way or the other? So you're saying
What
that-
wouldn't be out of billable is, you know, if you look at the Jeep, we could put money down, that wouldn't come out of the billable.
That would come out of county allocation.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah, any out-of-pocket expense like that, so.
Yep.
So there is some, in essence, there's some recapture of funds by doing it through a lease, which
Yep.
could offset the potential depreciation for said new vehicle. So keep that in mind, as, you know, that is one thing that if we did buy something, we outlay all the money, it comes out of a specific fund, and we can never have the ability to recapture it. So versus what kind of Daryl's saying, what we've discussed too in the past is, if we can bill out for that, some other entity in essence is actually paying for that for us.
Well, yeah, that's true, but
Yeah.
still.
And it's a way to maintain fleet, and then the best thing we can do is if we go into a sort of a, per se, buy, you know, say we have a 10-year plan with any vehicle, then set up a separate account for, you know, so we don't, in 10 years.
And
we
that-
just
that's
don't have
what
to
we're
come up with the
working
money.
on.
Right, so
Yeah.
then we allocate out not only the cost of the vehicle, but every year we put in $2,500 for 10 years, which is $25,000, or $4,500, because eventually we gotta write the check out and go buy the vehicle again, rather than coming up with the money. So either way, you kind of spend the money. The one way is smarter if you could bill it out, because you gotta capture it. So a lease does make sense, but yet I do appreciate, I hate buying things new too, so. yeah.
Well, the way we're operating, we're pretty much forced to do a lease. We don't have free money that we can buy at the moment. We would have to plan for that into the future.
Well, and then I also raise the other question, and this, and I don't mean this in any sort of facetious way, I guess, but not that long ago, or at least when I first got on, I think what we have for vehicles today is by far better than what we did. And we keep kind of, at one time, the Jeep Patriot was good enough, and then the Winona was good enough, and then the Cherokee's good enough, and we're just going farther and farther. I mean, for long, we're gonna be driving tanks and Hummers around because we found a need, right?
Nope.
Is there really a need to be doing all this? I mean, is it occasionally it would be nice? And I mean this in a facetious way, but this is the way I run my business. I'm sure I want all brand new equipment, but I don't necessarily get it just because I want it or occasionally I need it. And we have to find do and make do with what we have, even if it's taking 2 vehicles versus just 1 vehicle, you know, on the rare occasion here or there. So are we creating a mountain out of a molehill, putting more expense into the budget, and then we just, like Steve says, it's a stepstone before you know it, it becomes the norm, and all of a sudden we'll never go back down. And so we're, like I said, so I'm just asking that question and saying, is this a nice or is this a need? Because, you know, we've got to respond to the taxpayer and say, hey, I see it's dropping around in all brand new vehicles and everything else, and other than what we're doing. So I'm always maybe the safety gate, and I'm not trying to be, like I said, facetious by any means, but I'm also trying to say, hey, is this a genuine need, or can we make do with something less? I think we've come leaps and bounds from where we were when we first started, and so that, I guess those are my comments. And I realize that I wasn't here and the apprenticeship was in it. That's fine, you know, that's not the governing authority, but I still bring it back because it's off the table now. Is there something wrong with what we have? Is it the lease? Can we just keep going with what we have? Because we keep adding cost is what we're doing. And so that cost is $100-some a month times 3 years, it's thousands and thousands of dollars. And like I said, we're thousands and thousands of dollars just to take another vehicle to go where we need to go, or put a topper on something, or, you know what I mean? So I guess I look at it as how I would run my company.
Do they only lease new vehicles?
Yep. Or, like the Blazer, it would have been, if that would have worked out, it would have been leased, or we could purchase as a new, even though it's got the 2,700 on it.
Yeah.
It's one that they used as a loaner,
It's never been titled
so, yeah.
in an owner's name, so then they can still lease it.
And we do use our own vehicles, like going to the fair and a few other things. I've used my Durango every year we use it for that, and we've used it to go up to legislative day and things like that. And like going to the fair, we use 2 or 3 different vehicles, hauling stuff over. And
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. I mean, the rare occasion of having to, is there really that much material that an extra, 25 cubic foot of space to justify multiple thousands of dollars for the indefinitely? Because like I said, once we go up again, that will become the new plateau, and then,
So,
that's the way it works.
Right now, we have how many pickups that are,
we have 2.
2 pickups? Neither of them have any kind of covering on the beds?
No.
What would
Now,
be,
for most of what they haul, it'd be tough, one of them hauls a 4-wheeler, and the other one sometimes has a 4-wheeler, has other equipment in it. It'd be pretty tough.
what I'm saying is, you can get these covers that pull you,
Yep,
that they're not a topper,
the
it's just a
flat cover,
cover.
yep, tunnel
If you had
cover.
one pickup with one of them on it, that would be an option.
Not for the display stuff we haul. It'd have to be a topper. And some of the times it would work.
We still have the Patriot.
No,
We
no.
turned that
The
back.
Patriot wasn't for anything like this. That was for the egg certainty for
Yeah.
him to take his
Oh,
stuff out, and that was
okay.
just for that.
So what do we have for vehicles now?
We have 2 pickups.
2 pickups, that's
Yeah.
it.
No, in the
Okay.
Cherokee.
No, that had to go back.
Oh, that had to
actually.
go back, yeah. Well, we had the Cherokee, but as a fleet, that's what we had, an SUV or 2.
The Cherokee, the reason that didn't work is it's not big enough for the stuff we're hauling.
I guess it's, you guys have to do whatever you're gonna do, but one thing I heard Cheryl say was that you don't know whether this COVID issue is gonna go on for 3 months, 6 months, 12, 18. Are you in a spot where you have the flexibility to just kind of stay status quo until that picks back up and then?
We do need a 3rd vehicle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's-
was
that's
thinking
where
the
it's-
same thing, Steve, but then when, I was thinking the Patriot was still around and we were able to use that, but no, I can see where we need a vehicle without a doubt. And it looks like we're kind of down to one choice for now. I sure wish we could do something though to figure out a purchase down the line on a leased vehicle, because it doesn't look good to be buying a new vehicle every 3.5 years.
Well,
And-
my
and it's
thought
a
is,
foolish waste of money, the way I see it.
if this works out size-wise and everything else, my thought is then maybe we do consider buying it out at the end of the lease.
Okay, I like that.
So, but
That,
you-
that was one of the reasons we originally went with the lease, is to figure out what's gonna work for us.
if we did go with that Grand Cherokee would, I don't know how the board feels, but would you go down 4,000 or 2,000 down? That, I don't know, 2,000, you'd have more of a lease payment. So do you have to allocate 4,000 and?
I'm sure we could find it. Basically, what we would do is we would take it out of our budget right now, and then as you get to the end of the year is when you'd find out if you have to dip into the operating reserves or not. With the $30-some thousand purchase, we know we would have to take out of the reserves by the end of the year. With the $2,000 or $4,000 down, we don't know. It depends on how things come in, how, if we continue not having meetings, our expenses have gone down. Maybe we'll be able to cover it just with the money we've saved.
So,
These leases, I imagine lease payment does not come off the purchase price of the, if you bought it outright, it would be 37,255.
Yep,
If you rent it or lease it for 3 years at 5,000, that's 15,000. That doesn't come off of that. So you could buy it for 22,000.
if we bought it out at the end of the lease, it would be a lot cheaper.
They actually pre-negotiate on your lease
Yeah.
what your buyout rate's gonna be.
Well, that's what I'm asking, if we can apply that lease money to the buyout price,
So
off the
they
price of
actually,
new.
so I'll answer that. So they actually, before you even purchase it, they will tell you what your buyout rate is. So you will know before you even sign on the dotted line after 3 years.
Yeah, I know, we had that on the other one, but does it equate to what we paid in already?
They will tell you
It's
that.
pretty close.
Pretty
Yeah,
close.
it's
It was
pretty
pretty
close.
close, yeah.
Okay,
There is no set answer because sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, depending on the depreciation. It is usually in the favor of the dealership.
yeah.
But I had a leased vehicle for my wife many years ago that actually was worth considerable more than what the buyout was, so we decided to keep it. So it, you don't get to, there is no answer to the question because they will determine that.
I mean, I had a lease once that when I made the last lease payment, it was mine. So basically a lease to own type of.
It all depends on how you stagger the lease.
That would be ideal for us, at least to own, if we could, that way we can write it off.
And we did, SWCDs are not allowed to take out loans.
Right.
So even at 0% interest, we can't do that either.
So, with this COVID pandemic going on, our meetings that you're attending, I take it as down, or?
Yeah, everything's been online so far, other
So,
than you guys.
You're saying though, even though that is taking place, you need a vehicle?
Well, that's why I kept the pickup on there. If,
What I'm
we
saying-
still need a third vehicle, yes.
Okay, what I'm
I
saying
have to get the
thinking
buffer,
is we
stuff
could
done,
hold
and that's
off
gonna
until
take.
the meetings pick back up again.
Yeah.
You know,
Probably not.
why we need
Still the
the,
field work.
Yeah,
Huh?
we still have all the field work.
There's,
okay, but the 2 pickups isn't sufficient for
Well,
that?
Daryl will be doing buffer work.
Okay.
So
I'll mention one more thing that the county does, and depending on how often you need a vehicle, we'll frequently rent vehicles. If we have like Commissioner's Road Tour, we don't own the van that the commissioners go out, we're just like, okay, we need to be able to haul 8 people for this day, bring it up, and there it sits when we need it to use.
So you do that from the dealership?
Yeah, or renting vehicles is common, I mean, you just will Google vehicle rentals and there's a lot of competition in that.
Okay.
market. So, depending on how, if you need it daily, that's probably not the answer, but if you need it once a month, that might be a good solution. So, just would mention that as one more, possibility.
So I don't know if that would fit, that would fit.
Yeah, we would need it daily for at least half the month, or half the year, I mean.
Okay,
The other thing, I don't know, I'll just throw this out, that, you know, if, we could maybe look at, like a covered, trailer, like a small U-Haul, if we need, you know, something of size to haul,
that's an idea.
you know.
For, would be much more, that you're only, see, I take it you use that for what you're saying, you need that size like 4 or 5 times a year or more?
It's
10 times?
at least, probably more like 10,
10
but
times a year.
I
So
guess
like-
if I was going to shows and Amanda, I wouldn't wanna be pulling a trailer in lacrosse or wherever to haul
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
displays.
that's what I was thinking, you gotta remember who's using these.
Yep.
For us guys, it'd be no problem, nothing against women drivers, but
But even so.
You're
in
just
a
not
down-
comfortable, and if
most
you
of
don't
her
do it, you-
Shows would be a downtown congested area, and to
Yeah.
pull up to a place with a trailer,
Yeah,
it wouldn't be efficient or.
I just throwing it out.
Yeah, I
there,
know, I'm just,
yeah.
Trying to shoot you down.
yeah.
I thought of getting a trailer for the 4-wheeler and putting a top on the pickup, but then again, the women crawling into a pickup to get the boxes and everything they need just isn't
Yeah.
the best situation.
not, not a
Yeah.
gender thing, probably more of the shorter people trying to.
Yeah. I mean, these newer pickup, I mean, I even got a hard time reaching into my pickup over
Yeah.
the sides anymore.
They're so tall, so.
Yeah. And Isaac's got a dually pickup, so I gotta get something to stand on if I gotta reach in that one. So it just, and everything would be coming out the back if you got a topper, so. Although they do have nice steps going up into them now.
So, maybe our, option would be if we could do a 4,000 down and 360 payment a month, which I believe is maybe about the same as we're doing now or less,
We're at 310,
310.
312,
311.
where we were.
It was. But remember now, that 4,000 is not gonna be able to go toward our
Yeah,
billing.
we're
Yeah.
better off to take the higher lease payment, cause we can bill it all out
Okay.
and do zero down, as long as there's no penalty for doing that, the interest rate doesn't change. Is there an interest rate change between, and I'm saying this on broad scope, not just towards any particular vehicle.
When you look at these numbers, these are estimates, all of them. For each of those, they have a range depending on which vehicle is available at the moment. So these numbers I gave you are the middle of the range. It could be, I got a copy.
Is this from St. Charles or Winona?
This would Winona.
St. Charles would do it.
Winona was significantly better numbers than St. Charles was. The range at zero is 449 to 469.
Well, if I'm calculating this right, it's only, on the term of the lease, $100 more to go zero down and do the 460. Isn't it? Cause you said it's a 42-month lease at $50 from 410 to 460,
It's $100 a month difference,
100?
360 to 460 a month.
Oh, I mean, if you did zero down versus the 2,000 down.
Oh, it'd be about $50 a month.
But over the life of the contract, it's only $100 more. You subtract
Oh,
the
adding
$2,000.
2,000 to it.
So I mean, if you wanna save your 2,000, over 42 months, it costs you $100 extra to go with the 460 at zero down.
But that, if it was 412 or 415, 5 times 42, there's your $200. Like you said, they're just close numbers. So it's
Yep.
what I see is it's the same. There's no penalty to
Yeah.
take the higher lease versus the down, if the numbers are
And if you look down in about the middle of the page, the way we did our budget for 2020 is we figured $5,000 for the year, and the way I got that was basically splitting the difference between our 310 and 500. And then the 2021, we figured around 500 a month. So any of these are gonna be well within our budget. Which, like I said, that's better than what we had a month or two ago. So they must have a lot better incentives, or they are really working to get our business.
Do you think that, this is the kind of a different, topic, but we use this vehicle to go there, do you think there's going to be a convention this December?
I have no idea.
Kinda doubt it.
The Bowser Academy so far is still on. That's the end of October. But they did say they are considering maybe doing online academy or virtual academy. They haven't decided that yet, and that's a month and a half earlier than the convention.
Well,
July, August. When do the new model years come out? What did they say?
Normally, some of them would be coming out any time now,
Yeah.
but last year, some of them didn't come out till after the first of the year. If you look up at Lewiston Auto, they don't have a lot of trucks there.
yeah, I don't either, they're very scant, they're all gone almost.
Yep. And that's one of the things we ran into when we bought the Dodge is Chevy had very low inventory because, was it a strike or something?
Well, they shut the plants down,
Well, last year,
last year.
And then when they were just starting to get up and running, then the COVID hit and they had to shut things down again.
I'll make a motion that we go with, $460 a month, no down payment,
Zero down?
$0 down.
I'll second that.
But is there a possibility that if the new models come out, you could get a year?
So close to the model year change.
So that's not.
This is on the price of car that they have on hand right now.
This is, well, one they can get. It's not on their lot, it's on somebody
Oh.
else's lot.
Okay, but it's available.
It was on, was it Monday he sent it? Monday or Tuesday he sent it?
Yeah. Because if you don't
And
keep that
that's
one,
why
it could vary the price.
If we can get a kind of a general approval that way, if that one, specific one isn't available, if we can get
Yeah.
one that's close enough to that.
Yeah, they can go nationwide and look for cars, but. So, we have a motion on the table for, that. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to, look into the leasing of a,
Before we forget about it for 3.5 years, I want us to keep in mind buying it in the long run, if that's possible.
Yep.
well,
But,
we would have, the Cherokee, but that just what vehicle didn't fit, so that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Okay. Anything new on the invasive species, program?
just a quick update, they've done monitoring on 16 different sites, and that's more than they've done the last 3 years, each of the last 3 years, just because of the weather. They've been able to install a bunch of trout signs, and just actually yesterday, they did some training. Wabasha County hired a new person for their AIS, and she came down and did some training with us, with Amanda and Michael. So they're ahead of, the only year they had better was their first year. If you have any questions, or?
No, I guess, what do they say the creeks are in good shape? I mean,
They haven't found, they had a couple things that they were concerned about and had them sent in, or took pictures and sent the pictures in, and was determined not to be what they were looking at. One of them is some kind of a slime or something like that I've heard of, but I don't think we've had it in Winona County yet, and they were concerned, and I don't think they've heard yet if that's what it is yet. I think they just got that this week. There's a crayfish, I can't remember what the name of it is, but there's a crayfish that they've a few times thought they had in here, and that's not been the case either.
okay, and then, buffer log, explain what's going on there.
We have 2,301 parcels compliant, which means we have 2 parcels that aren't compliant. So we're at 99.9% compliance. Those 2, both of them are working with us, or working with DNR or whatever on project that are hopefully gonna take place this year and have them in compliance when it's all done. We did the non-compliant, or the compliance tracking last fall. We still have a few parcels we're working with on correcting a few issues. And then as soon as we get another vehicle, I'll be starting the compliance tracking for this year, for another third of the county that has to be done this year.
I got a question for you.
Yep.
Can you have a feed lot within the 50 or within the buffer? Round bale feeder?
The feedlot part, that's all on MPCA.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you can, but I'm not positive. As far as the buffer, they have to have perennial vegetation growing. So if it's bare dirt, then it's a violation of the buffer rule. And that's a couple of the sites that we are having corrective issues with, our sites like that. and we've also been, Amanda's talked to Carly about those sites also, so.
I just happened to see one yesterday driving by with the balers.
Oh, yeah?
So somebody is pastured their buffer area?
Well, the pasture, you know, the creek goes through the buffer, or the creek goes through the pasture. And he's got all kinds of pasture, but the feed bunk is right down next to the creek. I thought, well, that's foolish. Why don't they have it up, you know, away from it? And that's why I was wondering then if it's, you know, affecting the buffer law. You can't farm it, how can you?
Yeah,
And
you
there's
you
no
can have
vegetation left.
pasture if the vegetation is there,
Yeah, nobody, you know what it looks like around the round wheel feeder.
yep.
Well, why would you have a round bale feeder right next to the creek?
Exactly. That's why I'm asking.
It's not so far for the cattle to
Get a drink.
get a drink.
I mean, we're here to protect, you know, the water, and
Yeah.
there's a prime example where everything's gonna run into the creek. They're gonna want, you know, because it's so close, they're just gonna put, you know, dirt and.
So you
know,
can
in.
pasture your cattle on buffer, if the pasture is, you know, including a creek, you can still
Yep.
pasture the,
Yep,
Yeah,
as long as you still have vegetation to have that,
but, you know, in a case
Grass
like
is
that,
growing.
in a hot day, the cattle are all standing in the creek.
and it, you know, if there's a little area the size of our couple tables, we're probably not gonna say they're out of violation, but if it's an area the size of this room, we probably would have to say they're not in compliance. And sites like those are so hard to see and know because it could be here today and not there tomorrow, or I could go by today and it looks great, and then he moves the stuff in the next week and it's bare ground the rest of the summer. We can't watch every site all the time, so. And it's very, very seldom that happens, but it does happen.
Okay. Steve, you have to update on the commissioners' meeting?
I'm sorry, it's only 10 o'clock, I don't do that. Yeah, at our last meeting, we had a rather lengthy presentation on healthy Lake Winona. So quite a few different ideas about how to improve the water quality in that lake. Apparently there's too many carp, too much phosphorus, and so they've got a couple of different plans. They call it aluminum, neutralizing the phosphorus, or how's it?
It binds with the phosphorus when it settles to the bottom of the lake, and it just kind of creates a blanket, and it's locked and it will not be released anymore.
Okay, yeah, so basically, chemicals, I guess. So, I don't know, and there's some, maybe ponds prior to the lake that, Gilmore Creek could flow through and have, settling before it reaches the lake. But, so, with that in, Sheila, was that potentially one money that could be used for that?
Potentially, we just had a call with city, staff yesterday, just to kind of talk through, because there's, Bowser has some clean water funds that RFP is now open, and trying to identify what's a good fit for us to move forward with an app. The city can't apply for an application, but the county can on their behalf, and the city would provide the match and do all the legwork and everything, but, so that's one thing we're talking about, well, which practice does the city want to move forward with, and how, you know, it'll be competitive, and there'll be less money there than there was last year, so we'll see what happens.
So you had mentioned a pond. At one time, I think when we were working on the wraps, the city, they were talking about possibly putting in some stormwater ponds or whatever to capture the storm sewage before they enter the lake also.
That is one of the options that they mentioned in the assessment report. There's 5 locations into the southeast bay that the consultant identified as, hey, we could put iron filtration system here, and this will help. Or at one of those locations, however, those locations are all in the park area. And so would the citizens of the city like having a infiltration treatment, so that was, we figured that's probably, let's work on some of these other practices first before we, and see how that reduces the phosphorus. But then one of the other practices that was recommended into the Northwest Bay, putting in a pond treatment system as it comes from Bowlers Lake to the Northwest Bay, so that they recommended a 4-acre pond to kind of treat that before it gets to, and so that'll take care of a lot of the stormwater that enters the lake from that direction. So that was probably at the top of their list, and then alum treatment on the southeast bay. And the reason why they recommended that one is because it's a deeper lake, and alum treatments are they're easier and less expensive to do in a deeper lake, because the Northwest is shallower, and because of the carp presence messing things up, they have to use a more expensive mix to kind of balance out the pHs when they do it. And then the carp, if they're there messing up the bottom, so that one would be a more expensive.
And this is aluminum based?
Yeah, alum. And
But is it aluminum based?
yeah, there's,
Just do a little research on aluminum toxicity.
yeah, and that was what was recommended, is that while they're doing this, they have to monitor the pH while they are doing the application, so it doesn't mess things up.
But it's, once you have aluminum toxicity, once you put that into something, your body, soil, or water, what happens is so there's a pH reaction in which phosphorus ties up to.
Yeah.
So high, medium, or low, so that you can actually use calcium as a catalyst to tie it. So you make tricalcium phosphate, and those things happen under pH regulation. Aluminum toxicity, I would rather have high phosphorus than aluminum toxicity, because it is a extremely small amount of aluminum that can kill everything. It takes a very large amount of phosphorus to interact. So all I'm gonna say is aluminum toxicity, research Alzheimer's, research birth defects, research all these things. And when you start dumping in one nutrient to control another nutrient,
That was my first thought. I mean, I'm just
You
like,
are-
right away, I'm like,
you are asking, it's the old solve a problem and create a new one.
yeah.
And I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but I got 20 years of studying this stuff, and I'll tell you right now, aluminum scares the ever-living S out of me. Because that, along with fluoride and a few other ones out there, are probably bromium, or bromine is another one, that are probably three of the biggest problems we have in health industry. Way greater than excess phosphorus and little algae and few carb. So there's other ways to control that besides dumping a chemical in. And keep in mind, the company is gonna tell you it's safe. I hear it from every single company. It's safe. It's safe. It's not that I wouldn't feed to a cow, right? But in concentration, it's scary stuff. So I'm just saying, please be careful.
Well, so another question I had is, as we're being presented that, why isn't the SWCD involved in this process? Why is it, it's in Winona County, right? So, I mean, but the presentations are coming to me, I come to this meeting and I have this other avenue coming at me from a different direction. It feels like these are the people that were elected to manage water in Winona County, so.
Yeah, and
So I'm,
the only reason I have been involved is because the city cannot apply for these grants.
Yeah.
So just kind of being a go-between,
yeah,
and so they have a phosphorus problem, it's identified in the TMDL, And so this assessment report was to get us to that next step. Okay, now we have a list of a suite of recommended practices with a feasibility study. Now it's up to the city to decide what they wanna do. And Josh, that with the alum treatment for the Northwest Bay also included sodium aluminate. So a mix of the sodium aluminate and the alum to balance out that pH when they were doing it. But that was more costly, and that was not high on their list.
Well, I don't wanna get in a lengthy discussion, but the reality of it is that company's gonna stand behind everything they're doing. They're not gonna go out and be like, yeah, this is what they're looking for. Yeah, we'll monitor it. Anytime you put a chelating factor into anything, in fact, let's just take Roundup, for example. Why did Roundup pass the board? Any chemical that goes out there, they have to have a 10-year plan. Notice you always hear 10 years, right? So they have a 10 years. What happens to it in 10 years? It was the greatest thing ever, because in Roundup, it was a chelating agent. It didn't go anywhere. It stayed right there in the soil. And Roundup is a chelator. It chelates manganese, okay? So, and that happens in a pH, everything has a pH range in which these things happen at. So the problem is now you have glyphosate stuck in your soil. Who knows? It could be indefinitely. We don't know. It's the same thing in our bodies. Chelates in our bodies, and we get a buildup of it. We can't pass it through. So when aluminum acts, very similar. Everything acts. You could take all the elements on a periodic table, and you can put them in a circle, and you can draw lines and chelators, and then put them under a different pH, and all those lines change again. And that's why they need to adjust the pH. The problem with it is they're using a toxic nutrient to actually control a potential good nutrient that's just in excess. So if I was and those things are gonna be okay as long as they maintain the pH. But there's still, if I lay aluminum out here on the table and there's no reactive agent to it, it in itself is probably just okay. But as soon as I add a reactive agent, as soon as something comes into that lake that we didn't want, we have a spill, we have this, we have that, we have some new fertilizer being applied, whatever it is, and we've got some sort of reactive agent to that aluminum, all of a sudden release the aluminum. That would be my fear. My fear is that if this is actually a chelating agent and we're binding it through a pH function, we're settling it down to the bottom of the lake, what if we ever had something else happen and now we've got a release of that? Because the whole idea is that if there's nothing for it to bind to and then become stable, we reduce that, then we have a catalyst or something that comes in and reacts it. We release all the phosphorus and all the back into the lake, and now we have a catastrophe. So I would be doing my homework like no tomorrow on this, saying, is there a better way to control this than by adding another aluminum is classified as a heavy metal into a situation that could create a long-term detrimental effect 50 years down the road. I don't know. That would scare the crap. It scares the crap out of me. It scares the absolute crap out of me because I've studied heavy metals and soils and biology for many, many years. I would be, I don't know, go dump a bunch of barley straw in there. do something a little more natural.
So the thing I understand is there's too much phosphorus getting into the water, into the storms.
And accumulated, there's too
Yes.
much accumulated.
Yep, so we have legacy phosphorus in the lake, that's been there from the past. So it's at the bottom, that releases at different times of the year, under certain conditions. And then we have the stormwater system that's bringing phosphorus into the system. So the two main sources.
Where is it coming from?
Yeah, is it coming from the lawns, basically?
It
or-
can't. It's illegal. I mean, you can put phosphorus on, and we're actually looking at starting a lawn and turf division, but you can put phosphorus on your lawns. The problem with it is 99% of it being sold, including golf courses, don't have it.
Yeah, but just say,
You know?
you'll know the answer, Josh. All the leaves that fall off the trees go into the stormwater system and then they end up in the lake. Does that break down and turn into phosphorus? I don't know.
Well, under that pretense, We could say that channeling water will do that, right? It's the downside of channeling water into something. So if we're channeling water into our lakes, for lack of better terms, because we have nowhere else to go with that, then is the lake a reservoir for our channeled water, or is the lake a preservation for wildlife?
So I've canoed that Lake Winona,
Yeah.
and I started counting the amount of sewer, dumps that went into it, and like, I got to a couple dozen, and I'm like, I ain't gonna be able to count.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it's
So,
just, and so then
that's the
you don't
question
want
I've
people-
always posed. Is this a reservoir for our channeled water?
Yeah.
Or is this preservation of nature? And the problem is, we're trying to make it both. And then man comes in and says, well, let's add chemical and do this and do that to try to make it both, because we see a body of water and everybody's like, ooh, body of
Well, they
water, we
want
need
it,
to make
you know,
this
they want it
nice.
swimmable.
And I say, well, then don't channel all your water. Because if you wanna make it nice, you can't channel all your water into one area.
No, if Winona was a new town, it wouldn't lay out this way.
Right, no.
Those storm sewers have been there for, what? 100,
Exactly.
150
And so
years.
the real reality is that, are you ever going to make it what you want? And then adding chemical or heavy metals or whatever else to try to manage it, is that the answer? Do you just
I
create a
thought the
problem?
solution was dredging it. That was gonna,
No, that's quite expensive. That's been done in the past, but the consultant did not recommend that because it is so cost prohibitive. Also, he mentioned that if you do the dredging, well, then you're stirring up and reintroducing all the sedimentation that's already on the bottom. That's probably buried under, so there's, that they didn't think it
So,
would be.
I'm just wondering why this board isn't involved in that process, and so it'll ultimately be a city council decision, is that?
Yeah, city
Which-
council.
And that, to me, just seems like they're not the ones that.
we never have anything to do with the city of
Yeah,
Winona.
The city is the one
But you've got a
that will make the
former-
decision and do the project, but it, like she said, they can't get a Bowser grant. So the grant either has to go through the county or the SWCD. And as a water planner, she's been working with them
Right.
for,
And the
for
city
years.
also is under, they're in MS4, and we have this TMDL that says, this is what we need for our phosphorus reduction. And so that directly involves the city, with the PCA on what is our game plan to reduce our phosphorus loading to this lake. So
What
that's-
happens if you don't reduce it?
I don't know.
Too much algae, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll
That's-
keep having algae blooms and.
Which has been going on for a number of years. Are they gonna get worse, or
Well, do they even use that, call that?
weed cutter?
Yeah,
Harvester.
Oh,
I haven't seen it out there.
I don't know.
I haven't seen it in the water for a long time, but I
It's
mean,
been a few years.
it used to be,
Yeah,
I don't know, did you live here all the time, or?
not for 20 years.
Oh, okay, so then you were here when they bought that, weren't you? Or not? How long ago's that been? All I know is that one time, I mean, you could almost walk across the lake down there.
Oh, okay.
And they come in with that weed cutter and they,
But they never dredged that lake.
not the upper one,
West
no,
one.
no,
or west one.
but I mean, they hauled truckloads after truckload of that
Yeah,
stuff
that
out
was
of
before
it.
I was.
But you never see it in the water there anymore, I don't anyway, I don't get down there that often.
I think there's a better way to go about it. It'd be more of a long term. I think the city needs to look at it and say, what do we have? Do we have a drainage system here that we're trying to make beautiful? Or do we need to control the drainage aspect and put our money towards that and reroute it and do something else with it? I think we're just putting Band-Aids on it because nobody wants to actually put a comprehensive fix-it plan. It's, up pops a problem, slap a chemical, do this, do that, suppress it. That's the same thing as the weed cutter. Well, that's the cheapest option, let's go cut some weeds. That didn't work very good. Well, then we go to the next, you know what I mean? And that's what I see happening here, and it just.
They're treating the symptom rather than the cause.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But first they need to define, what do they have? Is this a drainage situation? Is this a holding pond for our drainage, for our community? Or are we trying to preserve nature?
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to do more, And the city as a whole, the people, the taxpayers that pay for it, need to decide, do we want something that looks nice? Because that's all you're doing is making it look nice and maybe usable to a certain extent. Or do we want to control our water, and are we willing to pay for that? Which one do we want? If they say, hey, if the taxpayers say, yeah, we want it to look nice and control our water, guess what? You're not gonna get away with a weed cutter and slapping some aluminum in the lake. You're going to have to put together a comprehensive plan that's going to cost all you taxpayers a lot of money. Now, if you come and say, no, we just want it to be a drainage pond, okay, that's a different story. And that's the problem. What they want it all, but they don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's the common solution is let's do the absolute cheapest thing possible, which is just like kicking the can down the road. So they need to have that discussion, and the taxpayers need to say, yes, we want this. And then put a comprehensive plan together that says, we're actually going to control this, not just buy another Band-Aid and see if this one works. Because they're looking for the foo-foo juice and the magic unicorn, and it doesn't exist because you're gonna solve one problem and create another one. And dredging is probably the absolute best way, and get it over with. Get that silt out of the bottom, get the old stuff out of there, deepen the lake, because we all know that algae and lily pads and everything else don't tend to grow in deep water. They grow in warmer, shallower water, and guess what? So you're gonna just keep creating the problem. So eventually they're gonna have to face the fact that they've gotta do something actually about it rather than buy a Band-Aid. So, but that's up to the taxpayers.
And they did do that years ago when they set up Bowler's Lake, diverting Gilmore Creek to Bowler's Lake, and Bowler's Lake is doing that, it's acting it.
And they have to realize
That's
they're.
not catching the city though.
No,
But it's
not.
drainage,
It's
so they
not.
have drainage that has X amount of silt and sediment coming into it on a constant basis. And they're gonna have to, I mean, eventually it's gonna fill the lake up, so they're gonna have to drain it down. If you go down to Lake Okeechobee, I was just there last week, and we're fishing the weed line. What's the weed line at? It's at 15 feet. And once you get below that, the water temperature drops, and the aquatic species, they tend not to be able to grow through that because there's an exchange of carbon dioxide that has to happen. And they need X amount of sunlight. So eventually, it's the establishment of the plant at the bottom, because it didn't start at the top and grow down, it started at the bottom and grew up. And that's about as far out as they can start before there's not enough water or light infiltration, depending on how dirty the lake is. So they need to go out and figure that stuff out and say our lake's probably dirty because we've got sediment coming into it. What's our minimum lawn? What's our minimum area that we need to be down to control water temperature and to control sunlight infiltration? And then say that's our dredge point. That's what we need to keep this thing at all times. Otherwise, we're just gonna keep buying Band-Aids. And then you can control algae that does grow up to, from whatever point that is on in through other natural ways of doing it, rather than dumping another heavy metal toxin in there to bind up another toxin and then leave it all at the bottom. It's kind of like the old, let's just bury all the nuclear waste, or let's just bury all the windmills that go bad, or let's just bury all our trash. Well, it needs oxygen to decompose, and if we take the oxygen away, what good is it? So for me, I think it's just, I could go on. This is the stuff that fires me up because it's.
Sounds like you should be on a committee though to help. to
No,
run it.
no, I don't need another.
You're getting closer to your time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wonder how many,
do you have,
wonder how many tons of salt the city puts on.
That ends up in that lake.
Oh,
It ends up in that lake.
well, you could.
I mean, did they ever say what the pH of the lake is?
I know they did, I can't tell you.
Think of just a tire scrub alone on all those streets, Highway 61. I mean, if you could quantify that, how many tires are actually being thrown, literally being thrown in that lake
Yep.
annually?
Yeah.
So I mean,
all the-
is it a sediment pond? Is it a drainage pond to hold the pollution? Because we've decided as a
Like you said,
society,
salt
to channel
drainage.
all our problem into one area.
And then they wanna grow
And you
fish
gotta
in
have
it,
that
and it just
mentality.
doesn't.
Just
Because if
make
you
it-
don't, most people don't want it. They don't, well, we don't wanna think of it that way. But that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have too much else unless you wanna talk about jail or something. That's the other thing.
Is there anything, the jail happening, discussion on,
Well, I was able to get the county board to revisit the size of the jail, so we're gonna have that discussion. at our upcoming, a working session a week from 5 days down the road, our next meeting. Yeah, the latest cost estimates have jumped like another $4 million, so, this would be the single biggest expense the county's ever taken on, and I'm looking at our old facility we actually only had 35 cells, but we could have multiple beds per cell, we had the annex, we had 80 beds, so now the new equivalent is 80 to 100 cells. So we need to have some discussions about how many of these inmates actually need to be in the facility, how many we just have ankle bracelets, and what other ways. If they were in the annex, which was low security or low offense type people, do we need to be building 50 cells for those people? And so I've got a lot of reasons why I feel like we're overbuilding this facility, and combined with what's going on with COVID and how we were able to not have people in the facility during the COVID, and we've got neighboring facilities that are either empty or being closed. So, and then this teleconferencing, our county attorney has been all behind that, how well that's working out. Well, if we can take an inmate to Wabasha and then teleconference back with the judge, we don't have to do as much transportation. I feel like there's enough things that have changed in the last 6 months in the world with the COVID that it's worth revisiting. But what I feel is gonna happen is I'm gonna get indoctrinated with why none of those things make sense. Because we've got a judicial system that the sheriff's office and the county attorney's office and the CJCC, I think they want a large facility, and they're gonna continue to push for that, and I'm gonna continue to do what I can to push for the taxpayer that.
What's the taxpayer one?
So why does the criminal justice system, you say it push for such a large, what is their benefit for that? Why do they?
Right, they've got a litany of reasons, and the biggest thing they're saying is that in time to transport inmates anywhere else, it'll cost less in 25 years. Well, in 25 years we'll break even, and if the facility goes longer than 25 years, then we're saving money over transporting inmates elsewhere. So
Yeah, so
that's kind of their. And I totally get it that we need a jail and we need a place for our Winona Police Department and our Sheriff's Office to bring people in and book them and deal with them over the weekend. We can't have Wabasha be where everything goes to and then everything comes back to our court, for your initial hearing to see the judge, whether you're guilty, not guilty, whatever. We need some type of facility. But anyone who's gonna be there for any period of time, even a week, I'm feeling like we can haul you once a week to a different facility. We don't need to have everything in-house right there at all times. And so it's a battle, uphill battle that I'm fighting, and the Commissioner Ward is with me, but from what I've seen of the other commissioners, Commissioner Meyer has been, we need to do this, we need to do it now, we should have done it a long time ago, and we're wasting time not making it happen.
So the cost is not important to the other three at all, then, you're saying?
Well, I'm not gonna say that.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what's really come to light in the last, since this pandemic is the way that we can do it, teleconferencing things.
Yeah.
It's really come to light in the last 3 months, so, you think it would have some influence on people, but I
At the
guess.
same time, you're hearing all these people pound the drum, defund the police, defund the police. Well, defund them and give them a huge facility? I don't know.
Who's gonna be in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the oxymoron, if you wanna say exactly that. The very people that are pushing for it are the very people that are saying these things if you wanna take a political stance.
Mhm.
None of it makes any sense to me to begin with, but
Yeah.
I've never been a firm believer, in my opinion, to say if you're a convicted person of something, or even if you're suspected of being convicted, that by any means, I have to make sure you have cable TV and a great new facility and the most comfortable bed and a great pillow and, or any of that stuff. You're in there for a reason to make it miserable, so you remember not to come back. And I can't figure out why we wanna, it just makes no sense to me. It should be the most inconvenient part of your life. I don't care if you gotta sit on a bumpy old van, just like I did when I was a kid, going to school, driving down the gravel roads. Guess what? Go sit in a bumpy old van and haul your butt back and forth between Washington, Wabasha 32 times. I don't really care until you do your time. So to me, I don't think it's about the inmates. I don't think it's about any of this stuff other than, hey, we got a new facility. Look at us. That's what I feel like it's about.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm tasked with, part of my elected position is to keep the community safe. And if that criminal, or if that inmate isn't a risk to any of you for what they did, then there's some other way to handle them than building an expensive facility to house them in. And whether that's some type of reforming treatment program or an ankle bracelet, we can monitor them, and probation. I mean, there's a lot of different options other than an expensive facility and so on. So
We gotta pay for it.
That's one of the other things we're dealing with at the board level.
Okay, Sheila, you have something for the meeting?
Sure. Eric Johnson just wanted me to relay thank you to Daryl for helping out with reviewing with wetland projects and solar projects where, there were some building site options that were kind of questionable, and he just really appreciated help from Daryl since we're short-staffed. And also we're in the midst of interviewing to hopefully get 2 new people. We'll see. We had interviews this week, and we'll have a second round next week with 3 individuals. So hopefully we'll have some people to fill up some of the empty desk space that we happen to have. And also they wanted me to relay that we will be starting the second round of invasive species management grant that will be awarded. It will be going to the county board meeting at the end of the second board meeting at the end of this month for review for acceptance. And but in the meantime, we're continuing to work with property owners to assess the needs for the interns once they get on board.
Okay. Sue?
I just got a worksheet, a couple. One was our local work group, and one was where our contracts stand at this point.
Sounds like rain.
Hey. Held our local work group on
Last month.
August 11th? June 11th, sorry. Ahead of myself. Basically, we discussed the worksheets and the resource concerns that we submitted. 49 is our top one, and then we numbered them on down. We just did the top few on each of the cropland, forest land, and pasture land, and farmstead. And I submitted them as our top resource concerns. Basically, the reasons for why we actually submitted them, it's stated there. Basically, high susceptibility of groundwater and surface water due to the karst. Basically, the steepness and fragile soils in southeast Minnesota. And then we talked about basically treating the problem up on top of the hill before it becomes a bigger problem, in addressing erosion. You can see some of the comments that were made in regards to, improvements being needed. We did discuss, trying to initiate something where we could cost share on, farm equipment, like a no-till drill or something like that, into our programs. That was something that we submitted up. And, the whole process is cumbersome, full of redundancy and outrageous paperwork for projects. That's in any government agency, but it is, so with our agency as well. We're trying to improve that, whether it's improving or not, is to be told, when we go through our ranking system right now. They still have work to do in regards to make it better, as far as operational and less redundancy in regards to, each of the pools of funding. They talked about, we had 9 people at the meeting, invited 32 people. 9 people showed up, which is pretty good compared to what other people were having in regards to show up to theirs with the COVID and stuff all going on. I appreciate Steve's comments and him showing up and some of the input that he had. Sheila was there, and Bill, Rocamp, from the SWCD, Jeff Hastings. There was quite a few. We all had input to it. It's difficult to show, how this is all gonna be used, but all the worksheets are combined, and our area office will combine them and send it to the, committee, up at St. Paul in regards to using this information to input into the ranking system and the questions that are asked in our ranking criteria and conservation desktop. So that's kind of, you can see the other comments, some of the, roadblocks, they're on the very bottom there in regards to, some of the media coverage. Then they usually cover the negative things instead of the positive things. We were asked to try to put more positive spins on some of the news articles. We try to, the best we can. We reward producers who are doing a good job in conservation regardless of their participation in programs, because there are people that are doing it on their own nickel versus actually seeking out government assistance to do it too, and they should be acknowledged as well as the people that are in programs and taking the government dollars to help improve their lands. Provide more information on benefits and return on investment for some of the conservation practices. I think that discussion was more around, mostly around cover crops and no-tilling. That would help producers to adopt it, and we thought if we could get cost share to put towards the equipment, they'd be more likely to do it if they had the equipment in their shed versus if they didn't have the equipment in their shed. It's finding somebody to go plant that cover crop, by no-tilling it in or whatever, to this, on the sites. I don't know. And do you have any comments, or, Bill, in regards to the meeting, how it went?
I think it went okay. I don't have any other comments.
Okay. The second sheet is basically the entire area of southeast Minnesota. It's Fillmore, Houston, and Winona are together now. We now have a team lead. Jessica Bronson got that position, or applied for it and was selected for it. She started her position on the 6th, so things are going to be changing in regards to how things are administered, from the payments to supervisory stuff. That is all being handled by Jessica. So we're moving into our condensed offices. That's starting to happen. August 14th, we have a teleconference to announce, the 10-1, consolidation of offices, and then, everybody's responsibilities and how that's all gonna be handled. So that's coming up. There'll be a video conference call, and then we have a face-to-face meeting after that, with, team leads, and the SOCONs and the DCs that are left. Once several of the DCs retire and leave, they'll be replaced with SOCONs with 9-level SOCONs, which will be a real different aspect because you won't have that DC leadership in the local office anymore. That's what's happening. Good, bad, or indifferent. Our footprint is shrinking.
Okay, you have more?
No, that's it.
Andy, you want to report on the ball meeting? Did you attend that?
We had that, I think it was Skype or whatever it was called, anyway, Cindy got it set up for me. It was on June 17th, and this time around it was on groundwater, how it moves, and how the nitrates move in the groundwater. One thing that surprised me.
They're moving right now.
What?
They're moving right now.
Yeah. They never explained why, but they said that sinkholes doesn't have much influence on contamination like they used to have, because everybody used to throw all their junk and empty chemical cans and everything else in them. And I think with the education over the last 30 years or better, they claim that the sinkholes aren't as bad as what they used to be. Another part of it was they had 3 categories. Bluffland was Houston, Winona, Waukesha County. The Garst area was it Fillmore, Olmsted, the next 3 counties over anyway. And then the tilled one section was the next 3 counties over. And and Daryl might know this, they have a way of testing the nitrates in the water and they on some sort of a chart. Anyway, Bluffland, which this kind of surprised me, we're only at 3.4. And the Garst is 9.2 and the tilled is 12. And you always hear about with our Garst geology around here, it's contamination is so much easier. But then when they further into the meeting, they went on to say that because all the bluffland along the river, we got all of our state parks and stuff like that, there's so much less agriculture, so there's not as much nitrogen used, so therefore you got less nitrates in the water. And then when you get over to the Garst, it's 3 times the amount of what we have. And then you get over to the tilled, which is, the nice big flat, big fields and stuff. A lot of them are tiled and stuff. They have more of it. The Minnesota Corn Research and Promotion Council and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency developed a video on how groundwater moves and how nitrates move in the groundwater. This cost $24,000 to put together, and it's going to be out in September. And this Nancy North, who talked on that, is an outreach program, and this video would be good to educate people, not only farmers, but city governments and things like that. Probably a good one for once, the guy would have to watch it to see exactly what's in it, but nitrates and phosphorus are probably be moving the same way in the waters. But it would be a good video for, they said, like I said, city governments, fertilizer salespeople, farmers.
Winona County Commissioners.
Yeah, just to educate people. And then another thing that they had, I think it's in line with this video. They also made a 36-inch by 30-inch poster, and then it's got, and we've seen it before, where they got the land, sliced, and then where and how the water flows, where it goes in the ground, where it comes out as springs like that. I thought something, and it was, I don't remember if there was a cost to it or not. But anyway, it would be nice to put in our booth at the county fair and stuff like that. And I think to get any of this information, you'd talk to either Caitlin or Emily from Rochester. So.
Andy, did you watch any of the videos that were in the link? I just wanna know what your.
I don't mess with the computer as long as she had me on there. I don't.
Don't sneeze, don't touch go, or
I
don't
thought
pass
the
go.
videos were very, very well done.
Oh, were you able to see that one?
Well, he took them out after that day because,
I was
Yeah,
just saying,
'cause they're-
I couldn't get the links to work.
yeah, because it was just time sensitive because they're drafts and he didn't want it to go out to everybody. But if you clicked on the link and watched one of the videos, he used drone footage for the landscape, so it looked like you were up above, looking down at an actual landscape. It was, I keep thinking of the Karst education trunk that we did in the past, and you're light years ahead of that, and how well done and how good it looks, and then showing how the water actually does move. So it looks like you're in a plane, and somebody just sliced off the side of the landscape, and you can see all the layers of rock below. It's really cool, and I just wanted to know what
Like I say,
somebody else who isn't familiar with it received it and would understand.
Once she got me started on this, she had to leave, so I was on my own. So I didn't mess with it.
Okay, all right.
One thing I found interesting as a farmer is that Minnesota corn growers put so much money forth to studying this, because I sometimes get the impression that farmers are blamed for all of the pollution that we have, and that they were willing to put money to research this. I just thought it was a good show of good faith for farmers, that we are trying to correct problems, change our ways of doing things to lessen the problems that we have. And that's what I got for balm. I was reading in one of the farm magazines, and this kind of shocked the heck out of me, is they did a study of all the lakes in Minnesota, all water bodies, and even those that don't have any people living within miles or a large area, there was not one water body in the state of Minnesota found without contamination of some sort. So some of it just happens naturally. Is that my point, I guess?
I really want to touch on that, because again, this is the thing, like the city of Winona. So a group of people that were convinced by somebody else, or read it on the internet, or were educated that again, we target a certain thing and we say, okay, we're going to go after phosphorus. We've got it in all our lakes, right? Or we got it in this and we got it in that, without really a baseline as to what, why, how, and where. Water ponds and reserves can be natural sources to disperse back out. That can be holding ponds to create a scenario to continue to feed other areas. But somebody said, well, we have too much. Based on what? Right? Based on what? Somebody pulled a number out of thin air and said, based on what? And so what happens, so I'll give you a case point example. So the state of Minnesota said, too much phosphorus. We don't want to pick on the farmers. So let's pick on the golf courses and the landowners, right? Or the houses, right? So they took a nutrient that literally does not move. Literally does not move. The only way it can move into your water, it has to be attached to a carbon source. It has to be bound to a piece of dirt, material, something, because it is a positive charged cation. And they said, that's where our problem's coming from. You lawn owners and golf courses quit. Okay, so what did the industry do? Oh, well, we still want green lawns. We'll just jack up the nitrogen. I mean, it's the classic case. Let's dump one thing to create a whole new problem. And then all of a sudden you go to the store and look at all the nitrogen blends. They used to be 12, 10s or 5s. They used to be, things like that. Now you go to the store, they're 30-06s. They doubled and tripled the end because people wanted green lawns. So what's next? Now we're going to take the nitrogen away. And then what's going to happen? Then the grass doesn't grow. Then we're going to have more sediment erosion. It never ends because we trip over our own feet. And rather than education and teaching people to say, hey, let's do this thing logically, right? The industry as a whole, and it is the sign of that more government doesn't fix problems. It creates them. They should be educating, not controlling. And that is exactly what's going to happen in the rest of this. So you're right. And I just use that as one of many examples that they try to blanket approach this thing and it doesn't work. And so at the end of the day, to answer your question about the pH, if they're using aluminum to tie it up, it has to be low. Because once you flip over a 7, actually calcium can be antagonistic to it. So it tells me that the pH is too low, so they need to oxygenate it. Plants actually release CO2 at night, and they absorb CO2 during the day. And so what you have is this dispersement of low to high pH that's happening in that soil area in that water. So anyway, so that is exactly what you're talking about. Is there's a natural amount that exists anyway. And so what we're trying to do is somebody picked a number out of thin air and said that's the number. The University of Minnesota standards is 25 and 50. You want to do. And where did they come up with that?
It's important to question.
It is. It's very important.
Okay. Anything more, Sheila? Or is it we were?
No, you were with the board,
you're the
with the
Oh,
board.
that's right, we were with Leroy. Or Andy.
Well, I'm done. Take Bill or Josh.
Yeah.
Jerry,
Bill,
wow.
you have anything for happening the last month?
Nothing.
No.
Josh? How was camping? I seen on
Yeah, but it was good, yeah. But my dad, myself, and Aaron Carlson, was there, he's in French, was there, St. Charles. We've gone on a few camping trips together, so we went out to Okoboji, and it was really interesting to see the aquatic, the weed lines. Where'd you go? Okoboji. We were in Big Spear Lake, was where we stayed, but it was really interesting to see that, how right out to that 15-foot mark, no matter where we were, that's where that stopped. And then you could keep going. And just how plants react, how they work. And even in the 5 days we were there, the difference in the water temperature. It was amazing. The first day we went out in the lake to the last day we went out in the lake, the water was literally hot. Like it was hot. It felt like you were in a hot tub. And as soon as you got out, you got a little deeper, how significantly colder it got. Just how that spurred all that growth,
Yeah.
Something that's changing all the lakes though too, is the fact that they now have zebra mussel, and the lake's getting a lot
Daryl,
cleaner.
you got
So the
something?
weed line's moving out.
Just that, I don't know if all of you are aware, but we're doing, presenting the Outstanding Conservationist Award after the meeting today. Leo and Bill will be going out to Glendee's to present that award. Also, let you know, our building has been sold. We have new landlords. It's Greg and Patty Reich of Skitterdoo Enterprises. They're out of Winona. They basically purchased the building to provide themselves with some affordable cold storage for for their other business. And we had a meeting with them last week, or was that this week? Last week.
They live in Minnesota City, right on the corner when you loop
Yep.
out before the Blue House left-hand side.
Yep.
And they just
Well, I'm
started.
not sure where, but in
They
Minnesota
just
City.
started Skitterdoo because it was registered this
Yep.
year on the 14th of May.
So they have business called Floramics, which is, they do it's rust proofing and, what's that? Lubricants, yep, lubricants, oils, things like that. And they needed cold storage, so what their thoughts are right now is to leave everything as is. Brian was using this space in between the two office areas as storage for some of his stuff, and they're gonna share that with him to use for their storage. And then hopefully eventually get this rented out also. It seemed very nice, really willing to work with us, working through the changeover with the USDA, and depending on how that goes, they may ask us to write a new lease. Right now, we're on month to month, and they may ask us to mirror the USDA one if that, right now that their lease goes through the end of 2021, so they may ask us to do that, or they may just keep us on the month to month. Just one thing I wanted to have you guys start thinking about, the September board meeting. We had scheduled to be down at Minnesota State College Southeast in Winona. I talked to the professor that we were working through down there, and they said that as of now, they're still planning on doing face-to-face classes, but their priority is gonna be to protect the students. So there may be a cancellation of community events. They don't know yet, but it's a very strong possibility. But if we still wanted to do it down there, we could still use their facility, and they would also help us use Zoom. They would link us to Zoom through their system, and it could be more of an interactive meeting than if we wanted to still do something down there. Like I said, we don't need to make any decisions. I don't think we can make a decision right now, but just kind of think about it, so you're ready to maybe make a decision in August if we have more information then. Also just want to remind Bill and maybe Jerry, if Bill's not available, there's probably going to be a Southeast SWCD Technical Support Joint Powers Board meeting at the end of the month. Nothing's come out, but it's always been around the 29th or 30th of July.
Okay.
And I'm sure that'll be online again like the last one. As Sheila had mentioned, the Bowser is receiving applications for Clean Water Fund competitive grants. I'm looking at a possible one right now that I may bring to you guys in August if we can figure out how we can make it eligible. Right now, I've talked to Sheila about it a little bit too. We're not finding how we can make it available, but we're gonna keep working, or make it eligible. But we're still working on it. So we might bring some to you in August. And it's with the Pickwick Mill Dam. They need some repairs on the actual dam itself, not the spillway, but the dam itself. And everything we're finding, we just not sure how we can make it fit, but we're gonna try. And so it'd be similar to what you're working with the city of Winona, where the project and everything would be done through the Pickwick Mill. We would just be sponsoring them for the grant. And just, there's been zero word from Bowser on funding or budget cuts or anything like that. I know that most state employees are working from home, but it's been very disappointing how there's been almost nothing coming from Bowser as far as where things are going and what we can expect. That's all I have.
Okay. The Area 7 resolution meeting, that's July 21st. That's gonna be by Zoom. Do we have to board action on anything for that?
Technically, you need to approve people to participate so they can get per diem.
Any,
So moved.
Anybody, yeah. Anybody that
Second.
wants to participate can then by Zoom. Do you have a second?
Second.
Bill.
Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries for that,
Are you gonna have that set up here that day?
I don't know. We maybe could have somebody watch it on this. That's the only option we have.
Okay.
I can do it on my computer in my office, but we'd have this available. I don't know. You used it for what meeting? Oh, for the One Watershed, One Plan, you used it. Seemed to
That
work.
worked fine, worked great. It's individual, you know, you can't put it up on the wall.
Right, yeah.
Cindy was supposed to go to work Monday, but she's still at home now until I think January 1st, so
Oh,
I can't
So
use
she-
her computer like I
Oh.
did for the ball meeting because she was gone that day. So I'll check with her, and if, you know, if she needs her computer, I might have to call you to set yours up and come in
Okay.
here to do it.
And so you might need it too though, right? Jerry?
I can probably do it at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's a rainy day or right after a rain, it's possible that Amanda and Michael might not be out in the field, so maybe that one would be available also,
Okay.
but we won't know till that
Yeah.
day.
And maybe she don't need it for meetings that day from that time schedule.
Maybe she needs a break for a couple hours.
Yeah. So,
okay, anybody have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Like
Aye.
a joint power board August 20th?
Motion carries. Yeah, if we would have had a fair, we'd be at the fair right now.
Yeah.